everybody, I'm Natalie.
And I'm Lauren.
And we are Her and Her Girlfriend. We are on a journey to help others find healing through self-love, vulnerability, and authenticity.
So today, we are going to break down some relationship advice that we wish we would have gotten. The only piece of advice that I can remember is that relationships take work. What is the work that they're talking about? We find ourselves in situations where we are enduring way more than what we have to, just because we don't know what it takes to be in a relationship. So we're going to break down what work is and what it is not.
Work for your relationship does not mean that it is or should be difficult.
You might run into some hard times in your relationship, but it doesn't have to be difficult.
If a relationship is abusive, that is not something that you should be enduring. If a relationship is manipulative, you should not be enduring that. If you feel like you're being disrespected repetitively, that is not something that you should endure.
This is not the work that people are talking about. You should not endure any of these abusive, manipulative, or just all around negative or toxic relationships. I feel like these are the examples of work. So working on yourself. In this relationship, there was a lot of inner work for the both of us.
Self-awareness is such a huge aspect of relationships. Being able to identify your own patterns and what you are contributing to conflicts or situations or communication issues is so imperative.
While I was working on myself, I realized that I had to identify my ego and identify my pride and know when it flared up in my relationship. And if it was, harming my relationship, or was this adding to my relationship? How is this affecting my partner? So these were some of the things I put in work for. The benefit of being self-aware, you can now be communicative about what you need and what you want in your relationship and what your boundaries are and what you want, what are some non-negotiables in your relationship.
Right. First, you need to be able to observe yourself.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I would highly suggest doing is observing your behaviors. How do you react to situations? What are some of the coping mechanisms that flare up?
These are some questions you should be asking yourself. How do I feel? What made me feel this way?
I actually have a resource that I created that will definitely help you throughout this next week if you guys decide to take
up this challenge.
Yes, take up this challenge. It's a trigger tracker. And so down below in the description, you could download it at the link. You are going to track every single instance where you had some kind of flare up. What's so important about being able to document and record every instance of those triggers is that in the future, when you can reflect on it, you can be more objective about it. You're not in the midst of how you're feeling emotionally where you can't see and sometimes you can't even judge what's truly the root of that trigger.
Sometimes we can find ourselves in cycles and we're attracting the same people, we're responding the same way, we find ourselves in the same situations and we don't even know how we got there. So this trigger tracker will be a great way to figure out what patterns do you see in yourself.
Exactly, and that brings us to our next point of self-awareness, which is identifying your patterns. Human nature is through patterns, and sometimes you're able to identify the good and the bad within you by just seeing what it is that you're doing.
Sometimes it's really hard to start this journey of self-awareness. Get a parent, get a sibling, get someone close to you, a spouse, and ask for them to observe you too. Maybe they see things you don't see.
Some questions that can really help open the door of conversation for a peer to give you feedback on yourself. Have you seen a change within me?
Are there any patterns you see in my company that I keep?
And then another really great one is, are there any ways that I can improve?
Yeah. So these are some solicited ways to get some feedback. Sometimes advice and opinions come from unsolicited, like you don't even ask for them.
Nobody wants to hear about themselves when they're not ready to hear about themselves.
Exactly. That's where you get defensive. That's also where you need to check yourself. That's the best flash like red light saying, boom, you need to check this out. You are upset, you are defensive, you know, you don't agree with what they're saying. Why do you feel that way?
Even if it comes unsolicited and you don't like what they got to say, that's another thing to add to that trigger tracker.
Write it down.
So make sure you download the resource below. What has somebody called out about you?
Man, somebody told me I'm just like my daddy. And it was so triggering because all I highlight is the negative attributes about my dad. And I'm like, I don't want to be like him. I was able to recall that super fast because I've been working on this. I've noticed that I have a bad taste in my mouth about the characteristics of, you know, my dad. But I had to realize, you know, there was more within me I had to figure out. So we mentioned being observant and self-aware and looking at all your behaviors and how you react will help point out some patterns. So
once you're able to identify those patterns, then you can see whether or not these are patterns that you want to keep in your life. Are they serving you or are they harming you? And from there, you can decide whether you're going to detach from this pattern of behavior that you're exhibiting, or are you going to do something in order to change it? That requires intentional implementation of some kind of change. Identifying that behavior, changing it, and consistently working on making yourself better at that changed behavior.
This is a long, ongoing process. You're not going to get it right the first year you try it. You're not going to get it right the first month. You're not going to be consistent every single day. You may not even get this until 6 years from now. But just know that this is an ongoing process. You're going to have to do this over and over and over again. You're going to have to do this with different relationships, different friendships, different jobs. You're going to always have to assess yourself. So get in the habit of doing this now. It will kind of make your life a little bit easier.
I have a journal that is really focused on bringing out your self-awareness. And this journal really focuses on self-reflection, self-love, self-care, and journal prompts. I can't tell you how effective journaling is for self-reflection and self-awareness, to understand and to identify where there are gaps in your life, to uncover those shadows that are hidden in your childhood, to really pinpoint why you act the way you act.
Listen, if you can't afford to go to therapy right now, I highly recommend this self-transformation journal that she put together. I'm telling you right now, this work is so important as you are single, right? It will make finding your person and being in that relationship so much more enjoyable because you have found out this stuff by yourself, right? That's it.
Fun, baby.
Yeah, shameless plug.
I think you had mentioned this before, that self-awareness allows you to understand and clarify what your wants and your needs are.
Yep.
And that's going to help you to be able to better communicate those to your partner. Where do you need fulfillment at?
Right.
What are your needs that are not being met? And you need to be able to understand what those needs are in order to even be in a relationship, for you to be able to communicate that to your partner.
Communicate your emotions. Communicate what action triggered that emotion.
You need to be able to communicate with your partner a lot, often, and always. This is where a lot of relationships have some kind of disconnect, is because there is a lack of communication, there's miscommunication, and there is a fear of communication. There is so many areas in this line of communication where what is being said is not equivalent to what is being understood. I think I know what I'm trying to say to her, and I think that she's understanding what I'm saying, but she can be understanding something completely different than what I'm thinking that I'm saying.
I prove to her time and time again that my brain thinks differently.
Clarification has been the root of our improved communication.
What did you hear me say? We practice that now. That is a tool we have implemented in our communication.
Because what you heard me say and what I said don't sound the same.
Also would ask her, can you repeat what it is that I said, so I'll know we're on the same page, right? Like if tensions are high, we'll stick a pin in it and be like, do you need a breath? You know, hey, I see that your voice level you started yelling, and I could tell that right now you in fight or flight mode. And I gotta remind her, like, hey, you're not being attacked. You know, I'm communicating out of love. And that's another key, is make sure you're communicating out of love, and not that you're two opponents, but you're on the same team. You gotta get the message across correctly, you know, so that both parties can understand. Another component of work, allow room for growth. Allow room for yourself to grow, for you to change your interests, for you to change how you do things, how you express yourself, and allow your partner to do the same. Like for me, for an example, we went from Maryland to Florida, right? We changed jobs. We got fired from jobs. We quit jobs.
We look different.
We look different.
We act different.
We act different. We talk different. We carry ourselves different. There's no way that Natalie can expect me to stay the same as the person she first met me. That is making them live up to unrealistic expectations.
Right. And I think that that's one of the bigger things that also plagues relationships is that there is this rigidity amongst like, oh, you've changed, like you're different.
Yeah, you're not the same person.
Allowing room for growth does mean that both people are going to be on their own growth charts. Sometimes it could mean that you're kind of going parallel and you guys are on the same trajectory, but sometimes that means that you may be growing apart.
Last point is your relationship is what you make it.
Don't try to fit your relationship in a box that it wasn't meant to be. It's like if everybody is having a big ass wedding, yo broke ass don't need to turn around and have a wedding too, okay? Another example is social media is telling you that a man should be able to cover all of a woman's expenses when they're in a relationship. But ultimately it comes down to, what do you want in your relationship?
What works for you?
What can you and your partner, compromise and agree to? What makes you guys happy? Because at the end of the day, nobody else out here on these streets is in your relationship but y'all.
Exactly.
Nobody needs to know what y'all doing but y'all. Y'all gotta do what works for you.
If you find yourself comparing your relationship to other people, like turn it off.
If you're here,
cut yourself off from that.
If you're listening to these relationship gurus that are telling you what you should be doing and the best advice for you to get a man and all that stuff, all that stuff is BS.
Listen, if it worked for you, take it. If it doesn't work for you, throw it away.
So that is some advice that we wish we had going into this relationship and things that we've learned along this journey. What are some pieces of advice that you think should be added to this list? Leave them down in the comment section below.
Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
Bye.